Welcome to the One Stories podcast. Today you'll get to hear Cassandra Vohs-Demann's One Story. But before we do that, let's learn a little bit about Cassandra. Welcome, Cassandra.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so hey, let's just jump right in. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I'm Cassandra Vohs-Demann. Well, you said that already. And I own a Place to Shine Coaching and Speaker Academy. And I also own a Place to Shine Music. I've been a professional musician for 35 years, and I have a new company that helps speakers with stage presence and building confidence and just getting better at communicating with confidence. And it's become my passion. And then I'm also a speaker myself.
And just side note for anyone listening, Cassandra was a huge integral part of One Stories, helping the speakers with their stage presence. So as you watch all the videos on the YouTube, pay attention because Cassandra was helping everybody backstage before they took the stage to kind of help calm the nerves and help them with their stage presence.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. All right. So tell me a little bit about, so why did you decide to tell this part of your story that you share in your One Story?
Well, I think we all have stuff that happened to us when we were young, and I really get into a lot of, what started my journey in the beginning. Because as I got older, I realized how much those things affected me and how I operated in my life going forward, especially once I got into my 20s and I was trying to build my career, and I was really realizing how much of my past stuff was getting in the way, and my behaviors and the things that I didn't feel like I had my own voice. I always felt like I was adjusting to the room, like I was trying to figure out, how do I make everybody feel okay in the room? How do I make sure that, I'm not causing any problems? I'm not any problem. So I was taking care of everybody. Not that a lot of women don't do that anyway, but I did a lot of that. And in building some of the stuff that I built, I did it at my own expense at times because I wasn't necessarily leaning into what I always wanted. It was really more taking care of other people's needs. And I think the reason that that happened, and I go into it in the speech, is I didn't think that I had a right to have needs.
That's
And
huge.
so, yeah, and so that's where I thought, because I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth about what to tell. I think I had sent you a note, and there are so many stories I have to tell, so many things that I could have gone into. But I wanted to make sure that I covered that because there were a few really, really important moments in my past that defined how I moved forward in my life. And when I realized how much those had been impacting me, it changed because I realized that that's not necessarily who I am. It's not my voice. I didn't think I had a right to a voice.
Wow. And being somebody with a musical background, performer, being on stage to feel like you don't have your voice, that had to be just, I can't even imagine how impactful that was for you. So, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you learned through this?
Trust, trusting your own intuition, trusting your own gut, trusting your own soul, trusting your own voice, trusting what you feel like you have to say in the world, that it matters. It's the whole One Stories thing. It matters. Um, and I have made my career around helping people make their voice matter, to be able to step into their power, to be able to step on a stage and feel like they can own it and that they have a right to be there. And we have so many things that, we push down, or, imposter syndrome obviously is a big one for a lot of people. But we push it down. We don't think we deserve it. We don't think we have a right to say the things we want to say. We don't think we have a right to put ourselves out there, and that we should even be allowed to, depending on how we were programmed, in our lives. And we all have our trauma, that we're trying to overcome. But I think the biggest lesson was, especially in the story I tell about the one coach that I had, was building trust in my own instincts. That was as a coach and teacher and voice coach, but also just as a performer, business owner, knowing that, you know what, my instincts actually are driving everything that I do. And I was always I was always seeking out advice. And I would have times where I would feel like I would shift because somebody said something different than what my instincts were. And then I would go, oh, maybe I should be doing that. And then I'd go, oh, maybe I should be doing that. And maybe I should be doing this. And I struggled so much because I just felt like I couldn't land because I was so impacted by other people's input.
Yeah.
Um, and in my own journey of growth, and luckily for me, I had a lot of good mentors and coaches in my life and women and friends. And I realized that, wait a minute, people believe that I have something of value to say and they want to hear it.
Yeah.
Whether it's on stage as a singer or whether it's as a songwriter or whether it's as a coach or a performer, that was something that I had to learn.
And it's so interesting. It makes me think of that saying that we teach what we most need to learn. So you're out there encouraging everybody else to use their voice and show up fully and trust their instincts. And yet here you were, you know, kind of not listening to your own advice.
Oh, 100%. And and I did it in some ways, but I found a lot of my, I guess, value in the world and what I was offering people. And I still, that's still a big, huge part of who I am in the world. I am a teacher. I always will be. So embracing it was really important for me to say, I'm a teacher because I want to be, not because I am doing it to get something back or I need validation or, I need somebody to tell me that,
Hmm.
I have a right to be in the world because of what I give or do or help.
Right.
I believe we're all equals, we're all equals on the planet. So our value is the same across the
Yeah.
board. So yeah.
So what do you want people to know about what you do now?
So this has been quite a journey, which I talk about a little bit. I don't get into it as much as I had planned to in the talk, but
It'll be
um,
in the book.
it'll be in the book. But I absolutely love helping people. I use it because that's my company name, and my company has had the word shine in it for 35 years. Um, helping people shine. It is in my heart to do that. So when I say I coach speakers or I coach women and helping them elevate themselves and feel like they have a right to a seat at the table, a right to inhabit any space, and I coach not just women, but women tend to be drawn to me. But I think that my heart has always been about helping people open themselves and build the confidence to feel like their voice can be heard. And because of my background and all the things I've done and all of the training I've had, I have a unique spin on it because I have been a vocal coach and a performer for so long that I know what it means to feel vulnerable in that space of feeling like I'm trying something new or I'm trying to put myself out there or I'm trying to step on a stage. That's what I do. So I don't just like say, okay, stand over here and talk about it this way. I get into the nut of it with people where we really talk about your heart. We really talk about like, why are you saying these things? What is the connection that you have? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to talk about this? What's your why? What's your intention? Who's your audience? Who do you want to help and why? And taking it and having them focus differently on, I'm not focusing on myself so much. I'm focusing on what is the message that I want to get out there? And why do I want to get it out there? And why is it powerful? And that's what drives me because I really do believe that every person you help helps another 100 people.
Yeah.
So it has a massive ripple effect. I've seen it in my studio. I've seen it in all the work I've done. And I just want to continue that work now in a little bit of a different way than I have in the past.
What I love is you bring like this massive, like treasure trove of knowledge and experience to the table. I mean, honestly, like you have you have so much in your arsenal to help people, whether they're speakers or performers or musicians. It's impressive because you don't find experts like that very often. Usually it's like, I'm only a vocal coach. I'm only a speaker coach. I'm only a stage presence coach, but you have, excuse me, you have this big arsenal of all of those things combined. So I think when somebody works with you, even if it's only in one capacity, say someone comes to you for more confidence on stage, you're getting the whole package because that's who you are. You are naturally a nurturer, just from what I've known you, like almost a year now. You naturally have that caring, deep-seated, heartfelt, coaching realm to you that I think people love.
My husband always says it too. He's like, he always used to laugh when I would have, student recitals back in the day, because he would say he'd watch me watch them.
Yeah.
And he could tell that I was all in. I
Hmm.
was all in on, their growth, and hoping that they're going to, all the things that we worked on, that they're going to nail it, and they're going to be able to have that confidence and, build it. And I think the other unique piece about it, for me at least, is that, a lot of times people don't even really like their voice. And that's been something that I've dealt with in my business for years, is especially people coming in and say, I don't like my voice. I don't like my speaking voice. I don't like how it sounds. When I hear it on a recording, I hate how it sounds. When I see it in a video, I hate, how I look or how I sound. And part of the work that I do is also embracing who you are and helping you build your voice. So even if it's stamina, building up breathing, building up the muscles, learning how to speak in a way that's healthy, where you're going to have longevity, and you can talk for hours and it's not going to get tired. And so there's other elements to it too that come into it that build that confidence.
Yeah.
That in my Wednesday, I talk a little bit about, having some issues with my voice, and that was part of my motivation too, to like, how do I apply this to my speaking, not just my singing? How do I make sure I can speak for hours and not have my voice wear out? And so you're totally right. So there's so many layers to what I do. It's like a one-stop shop in many ways. And it's been fun to meet you, because you sort of go at it with a different angle that really helps people figure out what their stories are.
Yeah. I like to go
And
deep.
yeah, yeah. And then it's like, now how do you tell it in a way that feels like you, that feels authentic, that feels confident?
Yeah. Well, and because we are talking sometimes about really deep-seated issues and traumas that we've experienced, so it's not always easy to say that on a stage. So I try and help people say things in a way that's comfortable for them, where they don't have to say the actual thing, So there's ways to get around that so that you're comfortable telling your story. That comes into confidence, right? Because if someone's not confident on stage about what they're saying, it's going to come across that way, and people aren't going to believe you. And that's a lot of it.
It is, and you actually helped me in the sessions, because that was something that there was a couple really heavy things that had come up for me, that I was like, do I even want to bring these up in my talk? And I was able to not bring them up, but sort of, I was able to land them and just say, this was, I can say it in a way that people understand it, but I don't have to go into details.
Yeah.
They understand it, but I don't have to be like, yeah, this person did this and this is what happened. And, so it was nice to be able to be like, I'm going to be vulnerable here, and I'm not going to lie. After the When recordings, the next day, I actually was sitting there. I was going, oh my God, I talked about some things out loud that are going to be on YouTube, that I haven't really said out loud in a public forum. And
Yeah.
how are some people going to feel about that? But, I didn't really name any names, and I tried to be very kind. But we all have those things that it's like, do I talk about it? Do I put it out there? But I do believe that if we don't, it's very brave. If we don't, then that's okay. But if you really want to, because you think you're going to be able to help someone, then it's worth it. It's
Yeah.
totally worth it. And that's where I came to a couple days later after I was like, okay,
Yeah.
and I didn't go real deep, but I did go into some things that I hadn't talked about before. Yeah.
I was right with you there on stage with my stories too. Like those are things I haven't really put out to the world, so they are difficult. And there's a part of us that like wants to say the hard things out loud, but then there's also that part that wants to protect it, you
Mhm.
know. And so these are hard, and so you have to be at that point where you're ready to share, you know. So I thank you so much for sharing your story, your one story, because I know it's going to make an impact. And for anyone who's listening, in the show notes will be all the links to Cassandra. You can find her, connect with her, work with her, whatever capacity that she can, come into your life and help you. We definitely want to encourage you to do that. So thank you so much, Cassandra.
Thanks, Wendy, for all you do and for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, no problem. And up next is Cassandra Vohs-Demann's When story.
When everything changed, I lost my voice. And I took a leap of faith at the age of 23 and started my first business. And I never looked back. But there's obviously a lot more to that story. So let's go back a little bit. I grew up on a farm, and I was the fifth of 6 children. We were like the Brady Bunch. So there was 3 boys and 3 girls. Most of my brothers and sisters got in trouble a lot, and I didn't, because I didn't want to cause any problems. So I generally just stayed quiet. I tried to do well in school. And my house always felt very unstable, tiptoey. I'm sure some people can relate. Like I couldn't really be myself. My family was all into sports too. And I was this kid who was creative and loved singing and music and art. So I already felt kind of weird. And my mom loved to sing and she used to draw, but she never really did anything with it. I'll get back to that later. So when I was 7, I was brought into my teacher's office and she said, I wanted to let you know that you're being admitted to the gifted program. And I didn't know what the gifted program was at 7. I was just like, okay. And I was all excited because she said, well, the gifted program means you get to go on field trips and you get to learn different things and get pulled out of class. I was like, well, that sounds awesome because I loved school. And so I took my letter home. I was all excited to tell my parents that I was going to be in the gifted program. And I don't actually remember whether it was my dad or my mom that said it, but one of them said, so you're in the gifted program now. You're the gifted one. And I think if I try to remember, I don't think they meant it in a negative way. But it was almost like not okay that I was gifted, whatever that even really meant. And I'm glad that they don't use that anymore because it's very confusing to people. And my brothers, who I love, and I still, again, don't think they were trying to hurt my feelings, but every time I would walk in the room after that, it was, here comes the gifted one's in the room. Oh, Cassandra, the gifted one is here. And I realized that being gifted wasn't necessarily a good thing, at least at home, because somehow it drew attention to me. And I didn't like the attention that I got. But at school, it was awesome because I got to learn stuff and I got to grow and I got to do fun things. And I felt like me. I felt like I was home. In the 3rd grade, I had this great teacher, Mrs. Wilkins. And Mrs. Wilkins saw me. I used to tell her I was writing these little plays and these little songs, and I was always like creating things. And I used to have I used to make notebooks out of notebook paper and staple them together. And I would create little monster pictures. I don't know why they were monsters, but they were cute monsters. And I called it my little book of monsters. But I used to write little plays too. And she got wind of this one day and she said, well, you should do one in class. And I was like, that'd be great. And we did. Mrs. Wilkins was awesome. She saw me. And I wrote a song later that I got to sing for her at an event called The Teacher. And it was sort of my way of thanking her. In my report card at the end of that year, she had written all these amazing things. She said, Cassandra's a natural leader. People they gravitate towards her. She's a great writer. She's going to be a budding writer. She's going to be a great writer someday. She's creative. She's quiet. And it was awesome. And my music teacher would always write in my report card, Cassandra's got a beautiful voice. And I was really proud of it because I love to sing. And it was the one thing that I felt like I had that was mine. She helped me find my voice. In 4th grade, I was in class one day and they had the nurse come and stand outside the door. And she had one of those rolling scales that had, the height thing. And they were bringing kids out one by one and doing their heights and weights. Now, I don't know why they did this. It was the 70s. Who knows what they were thinking? But I know it's true because I remember it. And I remember it so vividly because it changed me. It changed me. And as she brought each person outside into the hallway to do their heights and weights, I don't think she realized that we could all hear her. We could hear the numbers as she was writing them down on the clipboard. So by the time I had to go out there, which, by the way, my name was V, so back then everything was alphabetical order, so I always ended up having to go last most of the time. I had already heard almost all of the rest of the class, their heights and weights. So I went out, wasn't really thinking about it. I was a tall kid. I was almost as tall as I am now by the time I was in 5th grade. But I wasn't overweight. I had short hair, freckles, wore a lot of hand-me-down clothes. You do that when you grow up on a farm with 5 brothers and sisters. And I stood on the scale, and what would seem like the loudest voice, she said 86 pounds. And all I heard was that I was the heaviest kid in the class. And it was at that point that I started thinking of myself as big or bigger than everyone else. And because weight issues ran in my family, I was so afraid that I was going to be judged. I lost my voice. I shrank. In the 7th grade, which principal was it? It was my elementary school principal actually recommended me to my neighbors to come and tutor their son because he had trouble remembering things in the summer. And so I was like, what? I don't know if I can do this. They had gotten all kinds of workbooks and math and English and whatever, and I wasn't a teacher. I was like, I don't know how you think I'm going to do this. But I got paid $5 an hour to come and teach him 3 days a week for 2 hours. Do the math. This was like 1981. So I was making $30 a week in the summer, and I was teaching this kid up the street. And what I found was I loved it because I could see him light up and I could see that I was making a difference. And it was then that I found my voice again. I knew that some way, shape, or form, I was going to be a teacher someday. I was going to be a teacher and I was going to sing. But throughout my high school and college years, I really struggled. Home was not fun. And I dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety, fear, self-consciousness. And even though I was a good student and a straight A student, and I excelled in choir, which I loved to sing, I never felt like I found myself. I always felt like I was hiding. And I was trying to be as perfect as I could possibly be all the time. Mostly because I didn't want to cause any problems. So throughout my life, there were these little glimmers of moments that told me who I might be in the world. Most of the time, I didn't believe them. I got my degree in music education and vocal performance from the University of Illinois. I felt pretty confident about it. I was a little torn about working in the public schools because I really loved singing. And I thought, well, maybe I can do both. Maybe I can be a singer and teach. So I got a job as an elementary music teacher my first year. I was excited. I was like, I get a full-time salary. I'm actually going to have benefits. Everything was working out for me. So I thought. But in October of that first year, I started getting sick. And I kept getting colds. And then I would get bronchitis. And then I get a cold. And then I get bronchitis. And I kept getting sick. And I went to the doctor, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. And they're like, they were putting me on all kinds of medications. And I was like, this can't be right. And my mom, who worked in the medical field, finally called the doctor and said, what is going on with my kid? We finally figured out through a blood test that I had mono. And I had mono for 3 months. And I couldn't stay awake. And I was sick. And I was trying to teach my first year teaching, and I saw 1,100 students over the course of 2 weeks at 2 different schools. And eventually, my voice was just gone. And they thought that I had done damage, which scared, here we go. I'm getting emotional. I thought I was going to lose my voice forever. I thought I wasn't going to be able to sing. So the doctor said, take a 5-week leave of absence. And so I did. And then they had to do this scope to see whether there was damage. Luckily for me, there wasn't. But after that first year, I realized if I want to be a singer, I don't know that I can go back. And I had somebody close to me that said, well, what could you do? What could you do if you didn't teach in the public schools? And I said, I have a couple private voice students. And he said, well, what if you just started a business doing that? Now, mind you, this was never on my radar. I had never planned on doing that. That was not my plan. And when I started, I was terrified. I had to figure it all out. This was before computers, by the way, internet, cell phones, all the things. Okay? So it was a different time, and you had to figure stuff out in a much different way back then. But I figured it out. I had to come up with a business plan, come up with my pricing. And I went to a school of a friend of mine who was the director there, and I sang for all the kids in the high school. And within 2 weeks, I had a studio of 42 students. And it was at that moment that I realized that I had more control over my destiny. And it helped my anxiety and it helped my depression because I could control my schedule. So then I went on and I studied opera. And I continued with the studio. And while I was teaching, I realized how much I loved it. But it was never something that I thought I was going to do. But then over here, I loved singing too, and I wanted to be a performer. And I found an amazing coach in Chicago who taught me so much about myself. And she was one of those people that we all want in our corner. She was one of the most influential people in my life in my 20s. She used to make me stand in front of a mirror and say, Cassandra, love yourself. If you're going to stand up in front of people, you got to like what you see. And I struggled with that. I still do sometimes. But she taught me to trust my own voice. And she taught me how to use it and how to master it. And everything that I learned from her, I brought into the studio. And I helped people go from not barely being able to squeak a sound out of their voice to standing up in front of audiences in professional theater and music and any other situation you can think of. All the while, I was also singing too, performing too. I sang with the Grand Park Symphony Chorus of Chicago. I even had the opportunity to sing for the Chicago Bulls during their repeat the three-peat. I sang a national anthem in front of 35,000 people. I thought, if I can do this, I can do anything. And I spent the next several years of my life figuring out who I really wanted to be in the world. I left opera because it really wasn't who I was. I liked writing music. I liked singing rock songs. So I left and I started over. And it was one of the best things I ever did for myself because I could really express myself in my true way, in my authentic voice. Eventually, I built a whole empire of things. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I built a choir. I built events. I was a producer. I sang. I tried to do everything I could to bring music and the arts to my community and give people the opportunity to shine. The pandemic pulled the rug out, and I pivoted. Now, I could go into all the horrible things that happened to me and my family during that time, but we all have our stories. My long story short is, after many months of isolation, sitting in my house alone while my husband was out working 12-hour days, I decided to reinvent myself. I didn't know if music was going to be the thing for me anymore, if it was even sustainable. I know now that I'm not ever going to leave music, so just know that. But I started a new business. I started a new business because I wanted people outside of the entertainment world to have the benefit of the kind of coaching that I had. The kind of coaching that helped me believe in myself and find my own voice and stand confidently on any stage. And I've done that. And I can teach people to do that. And I have hundreds of them. In 2010, I wrote a song because I was so tired of apologizing for myself all the time. And I wanted to write a song for women because I wanted them to have an anthem so that they would understand that I got it. But in many ways, it was for me even more. And it goes like this. It's called Here I Am. I'm going to give you a verse and a chorus. Some people tell me I'm funny, and others say I'm a little loud. Well, I've been told that I'm compassionate, and at times I'm much too proud. Well, I've been called an intellectual, and there are times I'm too emotional. Well, maybe I could be a bit more practical, a little less irrational, but all I can say, all I can say, all I can say is here I am. I know that I deserve to be in any room that I choose to be in, and I know that my voice matters. And so does yours. Thank you.
Your story matters, don't let